Alright, here we go. Hi, my name is Dante, and this will be a video or series of videos about, issues in P1, potentially some fixes, but the main goal is generally to start a kind of dialogue or kind of discussion about some major issues that I think the game has suffered from actually, since it's come out, since its release. So I have been playing since about the time it became, publicly accessible. As you can see, I have quite a bit of game played. I've played a bit of PvP. I know a lot about the game. I've played a lot of Pokemon MMOs in the past, so I have some experience in that regard. I'm not going to go into much about myself because I want this to be focused kind of around the arguments and issues that I find personally with the game. So first starting off, I will say that I think the game is really good. Just to preface this a little bit, it's probably the best Pokemon MMO, and overall has the potential to be like a really, really good game. But there are some really glaring issues that I think deter players from kind of continuously playing and create a kind of bar between the experienced players that don't mind this kind of game style and everybody else, which I think that it's kind of very alienating. So the main issue that we'll talk about in this video is going to be the economy and money making specifically, but there are a lot of other major issues such as PvP and the guild system, which I think could also use major revamps, as well as the endgame PvE and generally the difficulty scaling of that. And these are kind of the three main issues that I think make it difficult for player attention to be at its peak. And anyone who has played since the game has come out has definitely known /. So there's 475 people online, which is actually very good right now for the community, but I know historically that number, especially when the game had first come out, was much higher. And I've noticed that player retention through playing it is definitely a major issue. And I think addressing these three things will help it. There are some other minor fixes that could be made, primarily in the convenience section, which would be like an auction house and other things, which maybe we'll get to in another video. So yeah, I was thinking about making a text form, like an essay format of this, but I think that people are more receptive to a video. I don't do a lot of this stuff, so excuse any rambling or pauses in speech. So, issues with money making. Anyone who's played this game from the beginning will pretty much immediately realize once they complete the story that there is no reliable way to continuously make money. This has been an issue since the game has come out. I played on release, and within a week of me beating the game, I started making alt accounts. This is because there's really only three main ways of bringing items into the game once the story is completed, right? This is through boxes, right? You can buy these, spend money. This is a very inefficient way to make money. There used to not be any buff or reroll token rewards for these, but now there is, which helps it a little bit. Doing bosses, and then, kind of just random item spawns around the map or little quests, repeatable quests. These are basically the only way that money or items are brought into the game outside of making new accounts. So, are there other ways to make money besides making alt accounts? And we'll get into kind of the actual money rates a little bit. I don't have perfect numbers because I don't do all of these things. But like I said, this is more of starting a discussion about issues in the game. So, ways you can make money in PokeOne. PvP. Let's start with this. A lot of people, when you say you can't make money, will bring up PvP as rewards. So there are very good ways to make money with PvP, as you can see. I haven't played PvP in a while because I recently came back to the game, but I personally have made a lot of money on PvP and has been the main way that I've been able to make any money in this game. As you can see, I'm not that wealthy. The most money I've probably ever had is around 4 mil, which is a drop in the bucket to many experienced players or people who even have a fraction of my game played. So I'm not an expert at making money in this game, despite trying, which is probably one of the reasons why I'm a bit receptive. Even though I do know good ways, they're not ways I personally enjoy playing the game. So PvP. There are very good rewards, and people can make a lot of money playing PvP, except the issue is you need to be in the minimum top 5% of people to get the rewards, which means that a very small percentage of the people are really only accessible to making money through PvP. Now, this is not inherently a bad thing, because I do believe a meritocratic system, specifically with PvP rewards, is warranted. But I think that there are ways, specifically with changing kind of how the guild system works specifically, that you could increase rewards for the average player and make PvP more profitable for the normal person and not just the top guilds. I will get into, I definitely do want to make another video on the guild system going forward, but PvP is a good way of making money through daily, weekly, and obviously the monthly rewards, which is really the big winner. Specifically getting the Muse for a lot of people, that is a large source of income, but generally the gold and reroll tokens for the top 5% players is the main way they can kind of make money into the game. Now, your level does impact, see the region level multiplier, so there is a kind of PvE aspect that affects the PvP rewards, which helps the gold and Poke Dollar amount that you gain. So PvP is a good way of making money, however, it really only benefits the people at the top, and partially benefits people who are in, top 10 guilds, which is also generally people who are decent at PvP, not everybody, obviously. But PvP actually is the only way that even slightly competes with the alting method, but it is extremely gated to people who are A, good at PvP, have PvP Pokemon, so a lot of that also requires a certain amount of capital to get, so there's another inherent issue that you basically need to make money to be good at PvP, learn how to PvP, assuming you don't already know, and then actually spend the time climbing the ladder. So there's a huge amount of basically time and content that you have to get through just for a chance at being good enough to get the PvP rewards. So basically there's an extremely small amount of the community that money-making method is even accessible to. So here is the most common way and kind of the most intuitive way for new players to make money, which would be PvE, catching Pokemon, catching rare Pokemon that are worth money that you can then resell. Now, the issue with this method is that it's very RNG dependent, or time dependent, depending on that. If you do have enough time, eventually you will be able to produce a steady amount of Pokemon that will be valuable. The problem with this, I would say, is that a lot of the value for Pokemon is basically scaled with the inflation brought in through alting. Maybe I should have started with that, but while PvE and catching Pokemon can be profitable, it's still extremely RNG dependent to really make a large amount of money, and the money that you make from that is going to be much less on average over time than you would have if you had just spammed alt accounts. So for example, I know Gibble Hunters, for example, a friend of mine was basically looking for HA Gibbles for like 2 months or so. He averaged about 1 to 2 HA Gibbles per week at a 50% rate of finding them. At the time, they were worth about 2 mil. Obviously, since the HA buff and the party farming has been, bannable, these have changed a little bit. But with the HA buff, the price of these Pokemon have gone down. It doesn't matter. He was making about 2 mil, I guess, per week, spending about 6 to 8 hours a day hunting for Gibbles, right? Now, compare that to making alt accounts now, and that was probably the most profitable way of hunting for Pokemon. Basically, you have to look for shiny Pokemon or very rare hidden ability Pokemon to make any money, because those are basically where there's the biggest market need. You could hunt sync Pokemon, you can do this to make small amounts of money on the side, but it's really extremely low impact. So there's basically a lot of luck that's involved in hunting for the PvE Pokemon, even though it can be a good source of revenue, and a lot of people do go through this route, but I have a hard time believing that these people make even a fraction, from my experience and people I know's experience who have hunted large amounts for hundreds of hours. For example, I have 72,000 wild encounters, 44 days played. I have never seen an HA Gibble, despite hunting for multiple days for them. So that's just a good example of how kind of RNG and time dependent it is. Yes, you can, and now with Unova, I don't really want to get into the Unova stuff because it's not accessible to all people. I will just say that Unova does not fix the issues in the game, which is part of the reason I'm making this. I'm sorry for this being a bit incoherent and rambling. I did not plan this too much ahead, just some light notes. So let's get into alting now, which I would say is basically the best way to make money in PokeOne. Now, the reason why, as I mentioned earlier in the video, is because it's really the only way you can bring actual Poke Dollars into the game, besides through PvP and bosses, which are a small amount compared to it. You probably make about, what, 350 to 400k per region in just Poke Dollars. Let's just say 300k. Let's lowball it, right? Let's say you make 900k about through the 3 regions. That's more money than you could produce. Let's just say currently in Unova, if you do all the bosses, you can get like 40 to 50k a day, right? So just going through the story once, which would probably take you about a day and a half, it'll take you, what, 10 to 12 days through doing the Unova bosses just to even get half of what you would get from just doing one alt account run. So one region, let's just do, I know people can do it much faster than this. Let's just say do it on average. Let's say one region takes about 4 hours. So let's just say completing Kanto and Johto takes about 8 hours of your time, and you get about 700k in just Poke Dollars. Then you get all the boxes from doing this. So I had mentioned earlier that you could spend money, right? So let's just say you get, let's say you get level 65 Kanto and 50 Johto, right? Let's just say you get 110 boxes. This is the equivalent of spending, 40 euros, or 80 euros, sorry, in boxes. You get that just from making an alt account in about 8 hours of your time. So you're getting over 100 boxes of loot. You're getting 700k dollars. You're getting all the items that spawn, so that's leftovers, life orb, and I'm not talking about Unova still, so this is just Kanto and Johto. You get all the rare exclusive Pokemon, Aerodactyl, 2 Eevees, the legendary birds, Entei, Raikou, the dogs. You get all of this, all for, what, let's just say 10 to 11 hours of your time. And this will average out, let's just be really generous here, and so this will be a real low ball, so let's just say about 100k an hour, right? There is no money-making method that even scratches the surface to that in this game. Now, I don't necessarily think that there's something inherently wrong with alting. The issue is that it's really the only way that you can, A, bring any money into the game at a high rate, or items for that matter. And it's the only way that you can get even close to, basically becoming wealthy and reaching that status where you can just collect all these PvP Pokemon. So these players then inflate the market by pricing up a lot of these Pokemon because they have much more disposable income, which makes Pokemon much more expensive for people who don't do the alting or do everything else to then afford things, because there's so much money being brought in by them and they have so much money that they can always outbid or outspend other people. So these people are basically raising the bar for entry to get good Pokemon and to be PvP ready. I mean, it basically, anyone who's played this game knows you have to create alts. There's no other way. I have created, probably 30 or 35 PvP ready Pokemon, and I have about 3 alt accounts, which is nothing. I mean, there are multiple people who have 50, 100 plus alt accounts. And these are like the really rich people, obviously. But I know most experienced players have like 10, 12 alt accounts, at least, because it really is the best way to make money in the game. And you can do it pretty AFK. I mean, all you have to do is press this go-to button on each quest. I mean, obviously these you can. Press go-to and it just goes to it. You just run repels. It's pretty much AFK. Requires, very little effort once you can just trade over Pokemon and spam repels. And just outclasses every other money making. So the game has added some other things that slightly impact the market. For example, Battle Frontier. I'd say you could probably make around 30, maybe 40k an hour doing Battle Frontier. But it's really not that AFK. You have to constantly be clicking and stuff. It's probably a little bit more AFK than doing the story, obviously. But it's pretty boring. You need decent Pokemon, and there is still some RNG within it. And the rewards are pretty minimal. And you have to then resell the BP. You can pay money. This obviously requires outside capital. You can actually get a lot of in-game money through, pressing this little key. 40 reroll tokens, 4,000 gold, 6k weak buff, 6x weak buff. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention this. All the gold you get from the boxes from doing this story, you can then turn into more reroll tokens. This is obviously a huge source of income. There's bosses, which are, once again, extremely RNG dependent to make money. I mean, before the Unova bosses, which, once again, I don't want to get into, but are still very RNG dependent, and I mean, on multiple levels, and still hard to compete with the money you can make from alts, especially because you could just be doing them simultaneously. That's another issue. Mainly, Ash was the way you could really only make money with a metal coat, which is a very rare drop that was only worth 100k. So the bossing was pretty minimal. Now it's a little bit alleviated, but still not great. So overall, alts have just proven out. I mean, you could just ask anyone who is wealthy in the game or experienced how they make their money. Some of the really best players, Daisuke, Adinho, these kind of guys, probably make most of their money from doing PvP. Anyone who's at the top of the ladder, if you go top all time, let's say, give a second to load. Oh, look at this. He's quirky. He finally hatched. So we get a little hatch on stream here too, or on video. RIP. Any of these guys, Cremarius, I don't even know who this guy is. These people, if you're at the top, if you can get top all time, top month, let's say, these people can make money. You're in the top 50 for the month, you're probably making a decent amount of money in score, wins, etc. Otherwise, it's extremely difficult to really even lay a dent into the amount of money you could make per alts. So what are some potential fixes? I'm not good at this, to be honest. I don't really know a good way to alleviate it, especially because the game has been like this since its inception. Just off the top of my head, okay, here's a perfect example. I mean, this is a Dino running a Unova alt right now. So a top PvPer running alt accounts, presumably for legends, for gold, per money. I mean, it's not a big deal that he's doing this. I'm not saying that players shouldn't do this. I think alting has a place in this game, for items, for bosses. I don't think alting should be necessarily completely removed or bannable, but I don't think it should just completely outclass literally anything else. Like, if you're trying to make money any other way, you're basically wasting your time if your only goal is to make money. So potential fixes, and these are fixes that I think I will maybe, if I do make videos in this series, if this does have a positive response maybe, I will go into further detail about how I would do these fixes, because I do have more in-depth thoughts on these things, but it would take, quite a while to really flesh these things out. More difficult PvE with scaled or increased rewards. Now currently all the PvE in this game is pretty much a complete joke and easy, pretty much brain dead. If you have decently high level Pokemon and half a sense about how to do stuff, you can pretty much complete everything with ease. There's nothing that's difficult. And you could really create much more difficult bosses and rewards that scale with these things, right? So bosses that do not let you use items, bosses with inflated levels, mega Pokemon, stuff like this. There's a whole list of things you could do to make difficult fights in the game that are basically unfair but are rewarding for people who are good at doing them, or have the resources to do them, right? So difficulty scaled PvE with better rewards, less RNG dependent. Have a minimum, instead of like having everything have like a 5% chance of dropping something good, you could obviously increase like the minimum reward, so you always get something that's at least somewhat valuable. This could be a good way of bringing money into the game. Changes to PvP rewards to be more valuable to the average player. This is another good fix. This requires, honestly, a complete revamping of how the reward system would work, and I think would really have to do with the guilds. I think there is an issue with the guilds currently, where wins is really the only thing that matters, which basically incentivizes just spamming games, even if it's just against people within your own guild. So this is an issue that I think needs to be fixed to some degree, and would require a more in-depth video to really get into it. I think in general, the easiest way would be to create rewards based off head-to-head wins for the guild rewards to stop the swarming, and then have a kind of pool of money that increases based off of guild wins. So guild wins would still matter and would increase the rewards that people in the guild got, but for the top end rewards, there would have to be some head-to-head guild versus guild action that would matter more. So for example, maybe wins against your own guild or score that you gain from your own guild do not count towards the overall top end rewards. I don't know, that's just spitballing. I'd have to go more in depth and really think about fixes for stuff like that. Besides that, Pokemon dropping money, like in PRO, is a potential option. You know, I guess it's really, I'll leave it up to other people who are a bit more creative and maybe have thought about this a little bit more than myself, to find out ways that we could create or bring money into the game outside of alt accounts. Because I really do not think that having to go through the story and spamming it again and again, day after day, for 8 hours is a good game design for retaining players and having a stable economy. The fact that you have to, it's without an auction house, it's extremely difficult to sell Pokemon like in large scale. You have to find a specific buyer. You have to go through the process of meeting up with them personally, finding out a price. There's like a language barrier issue which happens a lot, which can cause confusion. There are so many factors where alting is basically just not only the most profitable, but just the easiest way to make money and the most successful. And I think that that's really jarring to a lot of people. I quit, for example, for the first time when I kind of realized that I was going to need to make a bunch of alt accounts. And when I did come back to the game in about September of this year, I basically decided not to alt account at all and just play through the game and try to make money and make good Pokemon. And, you know, I've been pretty successful in doing so, but I've put in a ridiculous amount of time in. If I had put this amount of time in making alt accounts, you know, I could have millions on millions of dollars. And that's just a fact about it. If you look at any experienced player and how they make money, it's through alts, and I think that's a big issue with the game, and honestly a failure of game design. And I think that almost everything else in the game is really well done, and so it really pains me to you know, see such a glaring issue. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Sorry if this went on long and it was a bit of a ramble. It was not that coherent at times, but hopefully I got my point across. You know, people will critique it, I'm sure. Mention things like how in Unova you can do bosses and get eggs and stuff like that. The thing is, those don't exclude alting. Alting is still compatible with doing those things. You know, doing all the bosses and all the daily stuff maybe takes an hour, right? And then the rest of the day you can make alts, and then, you know, you can do all that stuff on your alts too if you really care about those things, with how fast you can do them. So overall, hopefully this video is well received. Thanks for listening, and hopefully there's more to come.